All right. Well, welcome everyone. I can see the room is filling up. We are all so excited that you're joining us this beautiful Sunday afternoon. At least it is in Sacramento. It's going to be about 85 degrees today, which is perfect. I am Rivka Sass, and I'm the library director here at Sacramento Public Library. And if you are from outside of our region, we hope that you will tell us where you are. We love to have visitors from all around the world. So far, I think New Zealand is the farthest away we've ever had a participant in one of our virtual programs, but let us know where you're from. Just type that into the chat button. It's my pleasure to introduce our Mayor Pro Tem, Angelique Ashby, who's going to get this show on the road with a little history about why we are all here today. Angelique?
Yes, thank you so much. I was just putting in the chat, welcoming everyone, Rivka. Want to make sure everyone knows how grateful we are to have them here. Especially Dr. Grandin, you are all in for a treat. What a wonderful speaker you're about to hear from. But I wanted to just start off today's event by, first of all, welcoming everyone. As you heard, my name is Angelique Ashby. I am the Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Sacramento, but I've had the pleasure for the last 10 plus years of serving on Sacramento Public Library's Authority Board, which has just been pure joy. And this is the type of example, what we're doing here today, that I think really does a great job of illustrating why the library is so important, why modern day well-funded libraries serve communities so well. We're celebrating at the library May to honor Amber Clark. And Amber's passion, Amber is a librarian who worked in my district. Well, she worked all over the city, but her last position was at the North Natomas branch. And Amber had really two passions, but one she was devoted her life to. One passion was working with kids and young people, and her other passion, she devoted her life really to accessibility. She had a sister who had accessibility needs, and she just felt, whether she was working on teaching or working in a library, that literacy and books and information and access to the internet should be accessible, and that we should do all that we can as government entities to reach as many folks as possible with those resources. May would have been Amber's birthday, so we have declared it our sort of advocacy, awareness, and accessibility celebration month. And that is why you get to see Dr. Grandin today, and why I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Amber's life and legacy. If she were with us, she would be in front of you today talking about the importance of accessibility. Instead, I'm here, which means we need to talk about two things: the importance of keeping people safe and dealing with the issues that plague our society, because Amber is no longer with us because she was a victim of gun violence. As you know, she lost her life when she left the library one day and was killed in the parking lot by a disgruntled person who had come back to hurt her. And you know, it was Amber's legacy to try and help as many people as we possibly could. And we want to honor her life by continuing to do that. And so today we're talking about how beautiful the mind is, and how every person has something to contribute to our community and to our society. And I am just thrilled to be a part of it, and thrilled to continue honoring Amber. As the libraries are opening back up, and they're open, you can come visit us. You can come to the North Natomas branch and see a beautiful piece of artwork that was designed with accessibility in mind. It was one of Amber's favorites, so we had one made special for her. It will live in the North Natomas Library forever in honor of her, to remember her. It is a beautiful light up book that tells a story. And so I would encourage you to stop by and see that piece of artwork in Amber's honor. And I'm thrilled that you're all here today to hear from Dr. Grandin. And I just would encourage you, for the month of May, in honor of Amber, after you hear what you hear today, to think about in your own way, in your own world, in your own family, and in your own home, what adjustments you might be able to make to your own perspective on how to be inclusive and how to make things more accessible and easy for everyone around you. So I think that's our challenge that we're issuing. I want to thank the strong partners that we have, the best, easily the strongest partner organization I've ever seen come along a government entity, which is the Friends of the Sacramento Public Library, who are actually hosting this event today. I just have the privilege of stepping in and being Amber's advocate to remind you that we're so glad you're here and that accessibility is incredibly important to this library, and it always will be. And of course, I want to just say thank you so much to Rivka Sass, our head librarian, executive director extraordinaire. It is truly her vision and her passion to use the library to serve this community. And I think those beautiful hearts of service, Amber's and Rivka's and Dr. Grandin's, are on full display today. Thank you for letting me be a part of it, Miss Sass. I am very grateful. And to all of you here, welcome. Welcome to the virtual Sacramento Public Library event.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ashby. Yes, I am Rivka Sass. I am privileged to be the library director here. And before we bring Dr. Grandin on, I just want to mention a couple of housekeeping items. You can pose your questions using the chat button at the bottom of the screen. You can also put them in the Q&A. We really encourage you to do that. We also would ask that you visit sacramentopubliclibrary.org. If you're not able to stay for the whole program, then please listen to the recording, which will be available on our website later this week. As Mayor Pro Tem Ashby mentioned, we have 21 libraries open right now out of 28. And you can come in, you can browse, you can pick up your own materials, you can still use our curbside service. We still have our librarians offering personal shopping. And we look forward to the day when we can really be open and go back to a full range of programming. I also want to give my very sincere, grateful, heartfelt thanks to the Friends of Sacramento Public Library, our official fundraising partner. They have been there for us every single day, and they're here for us today, providing the sponsorship to this program. They are also, if you are so inclined, raising funds on the big day of giving to support our Book First program, which puts a free book into the hands of high need first graders throughout Sacramento County. Last year, they visited more than 170 classrooms and handed out 14,000 books. It's an amazing group of folks who make our lives better every single day. All right, enough. It's time to get started, and we are so excited to welcome our featured speaker, Dr. Temple Grandin, who is a scientist and an activist. She is known to most, I'm sure, everyone here today and to others around the world for her trailblazing work as a spokesperson for people with autism and her lifelong work with animal behavior. Dr. Grandin's life work has been to understand her own autistic mind and to share that knowledge with the world, to aid in the treatment of individuals with autism, and to make the world a better place, frankly. Her understanding of the human mind has aided her work with animal behavior, and she is one of the most respected experts in autism and animal behavior in the world. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Temple Grandin.
Well, it's really great to be here, and I should be seeing my slides come up. And I might want to just tell a little bit about myself. When I was 3 years old, I had no language. Looked like I had pretty severe autism. I'm now a college professor, and I was very lucky to get into very good early education. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get young kids that are not talking into a really good early educational program. Don't wait 2 years. You've got to start working with them now. Also, when I was a child, library was a really important part of my life. I had trouble learning to read. By the time I got to age 8, I still couldn't read. We were doing those boring Dick and Jane books, really boring, see Jane run, run, run. And I was not reading. So mother got a book worth reading. Of course, my generation, it would be something like The Wizard of Oz. And she taught me how to sound out my words with phonics. We didn't do endless drills. She just had me read out loud and start sounding out my words. And very quickly, I went from no reading to 6th grade level reading and became extremely good at reading. So what this brings up is use the method to teach reading that works. Because it's going to be another child, they're going to be a whole word learner or a sight word learner. Don't get too hung up on the method. What's important is learning how to read. Now, that's a new book I came out with, The Outdoor Scientist. One of my big concerns today is kids are not just getting outside and doing stuff. And so in The Outdoor Scientist, I discussed how my sister and I had a rock collection, how we collected shells and made mosaics out of them, looking at the stars, watching animals, looking at how plants grow and develop. That was something I did. There's a lot of interesting stuff outside. And recently I just talked to a mom and she said, oh, my daughter got outside and discovered that bugs in the grass were interesting. Yes, the internet's important, but it's also important to get back to doing some things with real things. A lot of students today are afraid to make a mistake. And I think that's because they aren't doing enough stuff in the real world. Let's go on to the next slide. The thing I want to ask is what would happen to some of our top innovators today in today's educational system? What if Michelangelo had been born today? Or Einstein, no speech until age 3, he would have ended up in an autism class. People can argue over whether or not he's autistic, but he would have been in special ed. No speech till age 3. Thomas Edison, what would happen to him? That's, I think, a really important question that we need to be asking. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I have a lot of grandparents come up to me, and they discover they're on the autism spectrum after the kids get diagnosed. And this grandfather had a good job, like NASA space scientist, because he'd be someone from my generation. And one of the things that helped them get a good job was learning work skills. I'm seeing a lot of kids with a label. They aren't learning life skills. They're not learning work skills. This is just not going to work. And if you look at, I was talking to that granddad about some of the people at Mission Control back for the moonshot. I think some of them may have been on the spectrum. And we want students today to grow up and do really interesting things. Let's go to the next slide. Well, that's one of the most important pictures taken in our generation right there. All right, what kind of people did it take to get us there over 50 years ago? We'll go on to the next slide. Well, I got a chance to go visit Cape Kennedy. Oh, I got really excited about that. About 3 years ago, I went to Cape Kennedy. I got to go inside the vehicle assembly building. I managed to get on the roof. I wasn't supposed to be on the roof, but it really was fun. And we did something really special there. And just today, early morning, the astronauts just splashed down. You know, I'm still like totally a space geek. If I'd had better math skills, that's what I've been doing. But I flunked algebra. Still don't understand algebra. But I'm going to explain to you why, just whether it's a space program or whether it's something for the livestock industry, you need to have all the different kinds of minds. So we can go on to the next slide. And we had a chance to visit this launch pad. This was 3 years ago. And there was a person that was running this project that had Tourette syndrome. And when I was out working with a lot of these big meat companies, where I was out on a construction site, big, huge factories being built, it was interesting looking at who was building the stuff. I'm going to estimate that on my part of the plant, livestock handling stuff, some machinery design, that about 20% of the people I worked with were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. And these are people that own metal fabrication companies. You know, you're talking about people that own businesses. And they would have been special ed kids today. You also need our kind of mind to detect risks. I walked underneath that launch pad with several other people, and you can see a little stairway there in the back, and I saw some movement, and I looked at the movement, and I watched a raccoon walk down the stairs and go into the bushes. He was living inside that launch pad at night. And I got to thinking, what have you been chewing? Nobody else saw it. I was the only one that saw the raccoon. And some of this gets back to visual thinking. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is one of my most important slides, the different kinds of minds. Now, when I was young, I thought everybody was a visual thinker. I didn't know that other people thought differently. And I've since learned I'm what's called an object visualizer. Everything I see is a photograph. And when I started talking about the astronauts splashing down, I'm seeing it because I was geeking out on all that stuff this morning. But us visual thinkers absolutely can't do algebra. It's too abstract. That kept me out of a lot of engineering stuff. But I'm going to show you. You're going to need my kind of mind. Then you have the mathematical person, the pattern thinker. This is the spatial visualizer. Sometimes these kids have trouble with reading, but they're brilliant in math. And then, of course, you've got the verbal people. And there's research that shows that these different kinds of thinking exist. Now, a lot of people are mixtures of these different kinds of thinking, but I'm an extreme object visualizer. And an extreme object visualizer and an extreme spatial visualizer are not going to be in the same person. Just not going to happen because they're totally different ways of thinking about things and solving problems. When I was in third grade, I was very good at art, and my ability in art was encouraged. You might have another child who's really good at math. Well, then move them ahead in math because you're going to turn into a behavior problem if you keep them doing the boring stuff. Move them ahead. But I've seen parents where they might have an 8 or 9-year-old kid who's really good at math, and they're both programmers, and they've gotten kind of stuck too much in the autism box because he's got a label. They don't think to teach their kid programming. That's what they need to be doing. Let's go to the next slide. All right, let's look at some mission critical math expertise. Katherine Johnson's role in computing orbital paths was mission critical. She was horribly discriminated against. She only recently got the recognition she deserves. But there was one thing done right in her education. Her math ability was moved forward. That was one thing that was done right. And Hal Laning, a single person in a messy office at MIT. That's all I know about him. Lived in a messy office, had a job at MIT. He did the algebra equations that made it possible for the very rudimentary computer on the lunar lander to work when the whole system went down. They were mission critical. And he admitted other people did all the work, but his equations, pure algebra. I don't understand it, but I understand the importance of it. Mission critical. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Well, let's look at some other mission critical expertise. It's only been relatively recently the secret got out. It really is the Playtex living spacesuit. And it was sewn by the best bra seamstresses in the industry. And their boss was a former TV repairman. This would be the visual thinking department. They know how to make a garment. The astronaut's going to end up like that. Yep, the Playtex. They won the bid. Let's go to the next slide. You need all the different kinds of minds. All right, let's start looking at the Mars lander. I tracked down the camera company, developed by a bunch of geologists. They love their pictures. Discovery through, I think the imagery, I think is the slogan for their company. But somebody assembled those on a workbench. Look at that beautiful hand-done wiring. That's going to be the visual thinking department. And I was just online tracking down all the bits and pieces of that little helicopter. I found her motor, her power supply, her electronic chips. They're Qualcomm smartphone chips. And then there was an engineer that was profiled that developed the little tiny power supply. But I found some really good pictures of that helicopter. It's got some pretty fancy bearings. That propeller had to spin really fast. Somebody in a shop made those bearings. That needs to get credit. They were also mission critical for that helicopter. So you need the electrical engineering, you need the mathematical mind, but somebody in a shop had to machine those bearings. And even if they did it on a computerized piece of equipment, you still had a very highly skilled person make the bearings. And some really fancy bearings on that thing, and I managed to find some pictures of them finally. Now I know enough about industrial stuff that I know how a lot of different stuff gets made. Let's go to the next slide. And there's a beautiful picture that the camera took of Mars, because the people that run the company, they love their rocks. They want to make sure these cameras are really good. And I found out some other interesting things, that the driver for the Mars rover is a bachelor's in geology. Thought that was kind of interesting. Let's go to the next slide. My grandfather was a co-inventor of the autopilot for airplanes, and he worked with another person who was probably on the autism spectrum, who came up with this wild idea of 3 little coils. Everybody in aviation thought it was stupid. It was in every plane during World War II. It was not stupid. It was revolutionary. But you had 2 different kinds of minds working on this. Let's go to the next slide. What would happen to Michelangelo today? At age 12, he dropped out of school. His dad wanted him to become a lawyer, and he went, ugh, I don't want to become a lawyer. Yuck, learn Latin. But one thing that was really important for his development is at an early age, he was exposed to art. Every church was doing fancy art, so he could go around and look at it. And he was raised in a family that used stone cutting tools. This brings up a very important thing about the kind of careers you go into. You got to get exposed to stuff to get interested in it. We'll go on to the next slide. Einstein, no speech until age 3. He'd be in special ed today. Steve Jobs, bullied in school. Where would they be today? They both had creative hobbies. We'll go on to the next slide. And Thomas Edison, he was labeled a hyperactive adult high school dropout. He probably had autism. Where would he end up today? We'll go on to the next slide. Schools need to keep these classes. One of the worst things that schools ever did was taking out cooking and sewing and woodworking and art and theater and welding and auto shop. Because I think a lot of students today are not getting exposed to enough stuff to figure out what they might want to do. And I worked with several people. They absolutely could not do algebra. But one of them owns a great big construction company, and he has his own private jet. He was saved by a single welding class. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody go into skilled trades. I'm definitely not suggesting that. But for the visual thinkers like me, it's either going to be the kind of mechanical, clever mechanical stuff, or it's going to be art or photography. I was, good at photography. That's another thing I did. Drawing, design work. And then your more mathematical minds that run in Silicon Valley. And some of those are probably on the spectrum too, and they avoid the labels. And they always talk about different kinds of thinking. That's one of the things that they've talked about. We need to be getting these classes back in the schools. Let's go to the next slide. Now, how do you figure out what kind of a thinker a student is? Well, in about 3rd grade, when I was 8 years old, that's where it became very obvious that I liked to build things out of cardboard. I had good art ability, and my ability in art was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. And the math thinkers would be good at math, computer programming. They also like to build things with Legos. But I'm seeing situations today where students are growing up and they've never used tools. This is ridiculous. In my livestock handling class, the students have to do a scale drawing. And I had a student this year, a college student this year, who had never used a ruler, never had used a ruler to measure anything. So we've got individuals growing up today totally removed from the world of the practical. And we've got lots of practical problems to solve. And then you have your verbal thinkers. And if they're on the autism spectrum, they tend to love facts, history, sports statistics. And as I said before, most people are mixtures of some of the different kinds of minds. We can go on to the next slide. We got to expose them to things that can become careers: graphic design, audio-visual technicians that set up the big concerts when we finally get the concerts going again, skilled trades. Don't stick your nose up at skilled trades. They were mission critical for the Mars rover. Absolutely mission critical. Doesn't get enough credit. When I went and looked up the little helicopter, right away I found out it had a smartphone chip in it. Yes, that's important, but it was a chip out of a phone. There was some other stuff that had to be very carefully done by craft, really, skilled trades people. Don't stick your nose up at it. I'm talking about the high-end stuff here. I'm not talking about roofing and asphalting and training animals. Because when you think visually, then I can understand how an animal might think, because they live in a sensory-based world. And then, of course, we got our mathematicians, our chemists, physicists, computer programming, and some of the verbal thinkers to be really good at specialized selling, like selling cars. A bank that I recently did a talk for has 2 verbal thinking people with autism that sell high-end financial products, because they know all the details of each product. Lawyers would be another area. Corporate record keeping. Let's go to the next slide. A Nobel Prize winner was 50% more likely to have an arts and crafts hobby compared to other scientists. Well, that's another reason for keeping those things in the schools. Let's go to the next slide. Now, when you're weird, and I was pretty weird when I was in my 20s, what I learned to sell my work rather than myself. This is how I dealt with an interview. I simply would show off my work. And I'm going to show you the portfolios that I used to sell Cargill, so I could design the front end of every Cargill beef plant in North America. This is something I worked on mainly in the late 80s and the 90s. We'll go on to the next slide. There's one of my drawings. That's my hand drawing from the mid 70s for the dip vat project that was shown in the HBO movie Temple Grandin. I simply, when I did an interview, put the drawings out there, show them the drawings, just show the work. Or if your work is programming, show off a phone app you designed and then show the code that goes behind it. Make it a really nice, little neat presentation. And we'll go on to the next slide. And that's the drawing that was sent to the head of Cargill back in the late 80s, right there, along with some pictures and my brochure and some trade magazine articles. And there's a scene in the movie where I go up to the editor of the Farmer Ranchman and I get his card, because I knew that if I wrote for that magazine, it would help my career. I saw the back door. Half of all good jobs are back door. They're not front door, they're back door. You get them by walking up to somebody at a meeting. Yeah, that gave me a press pass to get me into big expensive meetings. They even back in the 70s had like $600 registration fees. I wasn't going to be going to that. Otherwise, why does it say you have to touch to perceive? When my industry went from hand drafting to computer drafting in the mid 90s, we started seeing strange mistakes on drawings. Like the center of the circle was not in the center of the circle, was one of them. And I found out that in almost every case, the person who had drawn that had never built anything and had also never drawn by hand. They simply were not seeing their drawings. Let's go to the next slide. And that's one of the pictures that was in the original packet of information. I went to Mr. Fielding. We'll go on to the next slide. And that's the working replica of the dip vat system I built for the movie. I love the fact that my drawings were in the movie, and they actually put my projects, all my projects showed up in the movies. It also showed exactly how I think. Like I would say the word shoe, and a whole bunch of 50s and 60s pictures of shoes came up. That's exactly how I think. Let's go to the next slide. And that's my brochure. Well, I had to make it in black and white. Color printing was just too expensive in those days. But I made it really professional. We'll go on to the next slide. And somebody just wrote in the chat right here, their brain is like Google for images. That's how my mind works. You give me a keyword and I get images. It's just like searching Google for images. Now, the older I get, I've been able to think better because I got more images in the database. This is another reason why you got to get these kids out and get them doing stuff. So you put lots of different images in the database. That's another picture that was in the original materials, a system I designed back in 1983. Go to the next slide. And there's a black and white picture of the original project. And we'll go to the next slide. Visual thinkers, and I'm going to answer this question about slaughterhouses. Let me just do this slide and then I'll answer this question from Jamie. What I found in working on these big plans is the visual thinkers, my kind of mind, we do what I call the clever engineering department. A person who took a single drafting class at a community college, I worked with him back in the early 90s on great big factories, and he'd lay out the entire factory. Single class in drawing, not a 2-year degree, single class. And also I worked with a lot of machinery people who would make all the super clever machinery. And then the math thinkers in a food processing plant will do the boilers and the refrigeration and calculate the roof trusses, you know, the more abstract stuff. I found this division of labor on every project I was on. And where we're losing it is in the visual thinking department. Now, let's answer the slaughterhouse question. I think this is a good time to do it. When I first started in the 70s, I thought I could build a self-managing cattle handling facility. A lot of engineers make that mistake. They think they can fix everything with technology. I got my equipment out there in all those plants back in the early 90s, and half my clients tore it up and wrecked it. It was very, very disheartening. And then I got the power of the big buyers. In 1999, I was hired by the McDonald's Corporation to train their food safety auditors to audit animal welfare using a very simple scoring system I developed, where you measure just 5 critical control points. It worked like magic. I had the power of the golden arches. In fact, I got to fix this light that's in my ceiling, because when I put this like McDonald's plate that I got, and I got it just right, it was like the bat symbol on my ceiling. And I had that while we were doing this. And it was also very interesting to watch an issue go from being an abstraction. Oh, give it to the lawyers, let them fight it. Oh, give it to the PR department, make it go away. No, got the suits out of the office, and now they were actually seeing some bad things going on. They go, we got to fix some stuff. It was just like that show, Undercover Boss. And most of the plants did not have to be rebuilt. They had to repair their stuff, manage it, supervise their employees. That fixed most of the problems. And then there were 3 plants out of the 75 that did have to get totally rebuilt on the whole live animal end of it. But the others we were able to fix with a lot of simple things. And what this brings up is big buyers have the power to make change, but we had to make sensible change. And I was not shoving equipment down their throat. I practiced reverse conflict of interest. It really did work. We were able to fix the slaughterhouses. Then just as I got them fixed, and I was getting really happy about that, then 10 years later, we started having trouble with the cattle and some of the pigs. And this brings up the whole issue of pushing an animal's biology too hard. And you get a lot of lame cattle and a lot of problems with them. Yep, that's going to be a lot harder to fix. Let's go to the next slide. 20% of the people I worked with, special ed department, owned metal companies, multiple patents, designed and built complex equipment. I know a guy who has a big food factory, and I've been on his jet, the Willy Wonka's stainless steel food factory. Can't tell you where it is, non-disclosure agreement. But he started out at the bottom washing equipment. I'll tell you that much. Mechanical genius. We discussed every label he'd be. Autistic, dyslexic, you name it, he would have had the labels. But he got exposed to enough mechanical stuff so that he was able to do that. I've seen people come into a factory, learn every job on the line, and then 15 years later, they design the new plant addition, or they're running the half of the plant, or they're the plant manager. Let's go to the next slide. Everything you see there is imported from a high wage country. Took this picture back in 1999. In 2009, excuse me. And what's happening is the people I worked with are retiring and not getting replaced. So things like food processing plant, we have to import all what I call the clever engineering department from other countries, because there's a lot of stuff we don't make anymore. Let's go to the next slide. Goes back to taking skilled trades out of the schools. That's the Steve Jobs Theater. Notice no columns, glass walls hold it up. The utilities are in the little spaces between the panels. Carbon fiber roof. The glass is from Italy and Germany. I stood in the middle of that right there and I screamed, we don't make it anymore. And the whole thing started to vibrate in a really, really weird way. So it's not just the food processing plants. Let's go to the next slide. Well, then of course I got to check out the Mars rover. Mars rover is taking a selfie right here of the parachute as it's landing on Mars. I managed to track down where that fabric was made. And it was made in the UK. The parachute was sewn in the US. Fabric was probably made on high-tech looms from Europe. Not positive about that, but the factory had a whole bunch of those in it because I managed to see some pictures inside the factory. This is real high-end. You're not talking about t-shirts here. Let's go to the next slide. Visual thinkers, artificial intelligence, and people with autism, dyslexia, we're bottom-up thinkers. In other words, you got to fill up the database with lots and lots and lots of knowledge. And the more you do, then the better you can think. Concepts are formed with specific examples put into categories. Verbal thinkers tend to overgeneralize. Okay, how are we going to be more inclusive? Well, that's too general. We've got to figure out, specific ways how to make things work. Let's go to the next slide. All right, here are some tips for working with the minds that are different. Most minds that are different have really bad working memory. Because if I was a computer, I'm an Intel 286 or a phone on 1 bar of service, but I've got the cloud for memory. Warehouses full of servers for memory, but I've got to access it through a little tiny working memory. Any task that involves a sequence, if you hire some of these people, give them a pilot's checklist. Do not burden them with long strings of verbal information because I simply can't remember it. The big problem I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing too many parents baby their kid and things that I learned when I was 8 years old, they're not learning. I'm talking about shopping, laundry. I find that stuff very boring to talk about. I'm not very interested in shopping, but it's something I learned how to do young. And I'm finding out that a lot of kids today with a label, they're 16 years old, 12 years old, they're smart, they're doing well in school, and they've never done shopping. They've never learned money. That was taught to me young. I got 50 cents a week for allowance. I could buy 5 comics or 10 candy bars. But if I wanted that 69-cent airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. I was learning that at a very young age. And you can see that I definitely like aviation. In this other book here, Calling All Minds, I've got all my childhood aviation projects in there. Now I was using tools by the time I was in 2nd grade. We've got to limit the video games. I don't believe in banning them, but they've got to be limiting them. There's some people that have on the spectrum, some autistic people that gets friends through some of the online video games. So I'm not suggesting banning it, but we need to be getting involved with more real activities because I'm not seeing good outcomes. And where there's been some good outcomes with some of the video game addicts, there's been 3 successes, switching them over to car mechanics. And they found out that cars were a lot more interesting than video games were, and give them choices of things to do. We'll go on to the next slide. Now, this is my final slide. What is the ultimate goal of education? We need to be asking, where is a student 10 years after high school? I already had my master's and I was working on those DipVat projects. And one of the things that motivated me was I wanted to prove I wasn't stupid. Really big motivation. I want to mention one other thing about social stuff. I was bullied and teased in high school. It was just terrible. And the only place I had friends was friends through shared interests. Horseback riding, model rockets, and electronics. I would have gone into aviation. If you watch the movie, the infamous Scottsdale Feed Yard is featured there. And I would drive by the big, huge Motorola plant. And I knew I couldn't work there because I couldn't do the math. That's one of the reasons why I'm digging up all this stuff on the Mars rover and the lunar landing and this other stuff to show where skilled trades contributed to it. You got to thank those bra seamstresses. They were the very best and they were mission critical. All right, and we're going to have time for some questions now. No, I didn't think, I thought we were going to just do the short version. Okay.
Dr. Grandin, there are a lot of questions.
Well, that's just fine.
Do you want me to read them to you, or do you?
Oh, let's just go through. I've got some of most of them in the chat. Okay, I answered the one about the slaughterhouses. Okay, now what do we do about the pandemic and all of that? Well, a lot of the things that I have in the outdoor scientist, you can do in your backyard. We just got to start getting more creative about things in the neighborhood. But I am concerned about even normal kids not being exposed to enough stuff. I just the other day was still doing a lot of stuff online. You know, learned about a 2-year-old girl, you know, has been locked down for most of the pandemic. She's afraid of everything,
Mhm.
everything. And we also have some of these same problems with dogs. They're not getting exposed to enough stuff, and they're afraid of everything. There's been more problems of being afraid of the vet. We've got to, you know, get kids out meeting other kids. And I just had lunch with one of my good friends today, and she went up on the Horsetooth Reservoir out in the way out in the boonies, and her dog got to meet some dog friends. You know, and even the dogs need that.
Well, it's funny you would mention that. I have 2 dogs and I live in downtown Sacramento, and they are the ambassadors of downtown. They love everybody they meet, masked or not, and they want everybody's love. You're absolutely right. Animals need stimulation too.
Well, that's right. And you know, I'm concerned about some of these little kids. I mean,
Mhm.
this kid would have been a year old, now just turning, you know, right in this real critical age, never been in a grocery store, probably will be absolutely terrified. I think this is real serious.
Yes, I
And
think you're right.
now that what I saw some of the families here do is make a quarantine pod of like 3 houses and start getting together. You know, now here in Colorado, things are opened back up again. I've been on 2 flights now. I've got another flight coming up. I got a plant visit coming up. I just can't wait
Yeah, I
because
think that's
I've been locked up for too long too.
I think as soon as we can, Sacramento, to speak to what you were talking about with getting kids involved with things, we have something called an adventure playground. And
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I've read about that.
yeah, there's a location where they open it up, but then we also sponsor those at the libraries when we can. So it's
When we were
important.
kids, I mean, I saw a big adventure, but they could take old forklift pallets and take them apart and stuff like that. I mean, that's the
Exactly.
kind of stuff that we did as kids. We get all this old lumber and we
Mhm.
did, you know, we got a bunch of old sheets and bedspreads and sewed them together to make a tent. And I just figured stuff out. And this is the reason why I came up with the Calling All Minds book. You know, this is the more the well, the aviation stuff's in there, and the outdoor scientists, there's things you can do outside. When I was working on that, I've been noticing things like I watched a crow right next to where I live test pothole water, and he goes, "Ugh, that doesn't taste very good." Then he drank the water that was over on the side of the road. I watched a squirrel bury a nut and have to try 3 times to get the hole deep enough. I watched some butterflies on some morning glories, just in a patch of weeds.
Mhm.
Because I really started paying attention. Okay, what's this right here in my neighborhood? When I do a little walk around, even during COVID, I was doing that. Outside, wasn't near anybody. And we have a beautiful field right where I live. Never seen the kids in that field. They're not going to get COVID in that field.
No, kids need to get
Even during
outside.
lockdown, they could have taken the kids out in that field.
You're absolutely right.
And even before COVID, the field that's by my house would have been full of kids flying kites in my generation. I've never seen a kid in that field. And it's the kind of field a 50s parent would have loved because it's not on a main road. And we were taught traffic safety. But kids
It's
don't go
important.
outside, and even before COVID.
Yes.
We've got kids all over this neighborhood, and if they're out riding their bikes, they're with the parents. You know, even I'm not just talking about the little tiny kids. They're in the house holed up on electronics, and there's a place for electronics. Let's go outside and find a bug, and then we can come inside and look it up online and find out what it is. I'm all for that.
That's a great idea.
I'm all for using the internet to do that.
You're absolutely right. We're going to let's start with the questions in the Q&A.
All right, okay.
Is that okay? And then we'll go back to the chat because a lot of people put questions in there too, but you have so many questions.
All right, let's start with the Q&A because I'm not reading, so I've just got the chat.
Okay, so let me start with, how was it living as an autistic girl during the time you were coming up? I know autism wasn't as known back then. Would like your perspective.
Elementary school actually went fairly well. And one of the reasons it did, it was a small school, old-fashioned 50s classroom, 12 kids in a classroom. And my teacher did what was now called peer-mediated intervention. She explained to the other students that I had a disability that was not visible, like a wheelchair. So I managed to get through 6th grade without being bullied. Oh, high school, large school did not work for me. Complete disaster. And I got kicked out of 9th grade for throwing a book. And the girl who called me a retard, so she called me. And I got sent to special school for kids with problems. They put me to work running a horse barn. 3 years, I ran a horse barn, cleaned 9 stalls every day, put them in and out. My mother was not too thrilled about that.
No.
But Mr. Patey said, got to let her get through her adolescence. Now I had to attend meals, attend class, no recluses in the room. And then the last year I was there, my science teacher came on the scene and he gave me interesting projects. And overnight I switched my motivation because now school was a pathway to become a scientist. I now had a reason to study. Now somebody here just asked on the chat about community high schools or online high schools. I think there are certain kids on the spectrum where regular school's not going to work, but there's another kid where the mom says, oh, he's in band, he's loving high school. You see, I think it depends upon a lot of things. And one of the things I learned from 25 years being involved in heavy construction, I was out on very, very big construction sites, supervising these projects going in. Construction is all about outcomes. You got to get a project done. You've got to make your stuff work. It's that simple. And there's some kids where maybe homeschooling is the way to go. And if you do that, you need to have, there's homeschool groups so you can have some social life. The big problem I'm seeing with kids with a label that are fully verbal is not learning life skills and work skills. That's the biggest problem. I want 2 jobs under that belt before they graduate. Be careful with the multitasking. Don't shove them into multitasking chaos at the holidays or on a chaotic takeout window, because that will set them up to fail. And they're not learning bank account money. I can't believe the number of kids that have never shopped and parents are afraid to let go. So I'm visualizing, okay, you're at the gas station, you're pumping gas, just tell them to go in and buy a jug of milk. And you can see into that store. Okay, we can start with baby steps like that. You see, now I see that, and I'm even like going through the gas stations in my mind to think about the one where and what pump I could be at so I could see into the store when I send them in there. You see, that's visual way of solving problems.
Yes, it is. I actually like this question from Jamie. I am a special education teacher for children with autism. Do you prefer a person with autism or an autistic person?
Well, a lot of individuals on the spectrum prefer what they call identity first, which would be an autistic, I'm autistic. And in my very first book, The Autistic Brain, the very first book, Emergence Labeled Autistic, and then my book, The Autistic Brain, it got this title before I realized there was this was 2013 copyright, so it would have been written in 2012. And I was titled that before I even knew there was a controversy about these different ways of saying. Then I was told I was supposed to do person first, so I did that for a while. Then I found out that many people would prefer identity first if they're on the autism spectrum. And the things that I had written previous to that, I guess now we're identity first.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that. Why isn't there more support for autistic adults and it slowly phases out when people turn 21? Do you have a comment on that?
Well, I think we're going to have to, first of all, I want to get that transition to work done before they're 21. Now I'm talking, you see, now the other big problem we've got with autism is we've got such a big, it's so variable. You're going from somebody running a Silicon Valley company, somebody that has a food factory, somebody that owns a metal fabrication shop, or is working as an engineer somewhere, to somebody that can't dress themselves. And you call it the same thing. And they need very different services. Now, I think one of the reasons why the granddaddies, a lot of those granddaddies had jobs is because when they were 11, they had paper routes. Now, I know those are gone. But now we got to find paper route substitutes, church jobs, farmers market, volunteer jobs. I was just on a meeting last night with a pastor. I said, the church jobs, let's start them at age 11. We've got to start having learning job skills that young, because they need to have somebody that's the boss that's outside the home. On the job front, I'm saying it kind of holding a lot of kids behind. Now, where the label helps is with relationships, because in this book, different, not less. This is 18 people, autistic people diagnosed later in life. And where the label helped was on relationships. And they actually found it a relief to get the label. But I'm seeing moms that can't let go when I suggest simple shopping or ordering food at a restaurant. I mean, I don't even find these things interesting to talk about. I mean, my generation, every kid learned this stuff. And the problem is it hurts the autistic kids more than it hurts the regular kids to not be learning these kind of life skills early. And I learned how to work in that horse barn. And I also had friends through horses. And that was a really important thing to learn.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. All right. Brittany has a lot of questions, so I'm going to come back to Brittany because there are so many questions in our Q&A. Someone, I think your book is for, Kelly wants to know what ages, well, it's not one book, you've written so many. We are putting a link in the chat for everybody to know what books you can find at the library written by Dr. Grandin. But there is someone who works with 3- and 4-year-olds. Do you have a book that's appropriate?
I absolutely do. My book for the 3- and 4-year-olds is a book called The Way I See It. It's a book I don't have.
Yes.
I took it upstairs to look at it.
Yes, I know the book.
Yeah, The Way I See It, because it's a lot of little short chapters. And for someone with a newly diagnosed young child, I'd recommend that. It explains how diagnosis changed over the years. And you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can just pick around in it and read little small chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And it covers a wide range of things. It was updated, it's up 2 years ago. So it's still relatively recent. That's my most general book. Now, The Autistic Brain is the book that has the science for the different kinds of minds, for the object visualizers and the visual spatial and the word thinkers. And then Thinking in Pictures is my autobiography. And that has, it explains how I think visually. And it also, I had a lot of problems with anxiety, and it discusses that.
Mm-hmm.
How I handle
Oh,
that.
that's great. Thank you for that's a great summary. Ashley asks you, she says, I'm in college and come from a small farming town in Florida. Now I am in Portland. From a young age, I was isolated from my peers because I learned differently. I don't struggle with content in college, but I do struggle to participate. How do I explain to someone that I would succeed better if I could self-learn or away from my peers? I feel like I am failing because I struggle to participate. I don't know how to explain that this is a real problem and I'm not just lazy.
Well, I'd have to ask a lot more questions. I don't have enough information.
Okay.
Now, when I first started my work with cattle, I thought everybody was a visual thinker. You see, the first thing was learning that you think differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like to figure out where skills are. I find on a lot of chit chat talk, especially now that I'm older and I've gotten a little bit deaf now, it goes very fast and I don't follow it. And then if you're in a noisy environment like a restaurant, I can't, I don't hear it. If there's a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
But where I get friends that shared interests, I just love to sit around and talk about how to build stuff. Oh, the Ever Given, what's going on with that? Oh, I've completely followed the Ever Given. What a mess. They got her out just fine. The ship's fine. But it's now anchored, tied up in lawsuits. I was just reading the supply chain management things last night. They don't know how they're going to get the cargo off because Egypt wants to get paid and they don't have a crane big enough to unload such a big ship. Only place a crane big enough is way outside of Egypt.
That is it's quite the issue, isn't it? Yes.
I don't know. It's a mess.
So I saw a couple of questions. This is the first one that I'm coming across. I think there's another one related to this. Are you a vegetarian? And Danielle asked, because you assist in the killing of animals, are you a vegetarian? I'd feel so guilty.
Well, I'm not a vegetarian. First of all, I can't function on a vegetarian diet. My mother's the same way. If I don't eat a certain amount of animal protein, I simply cannot function. And I think there's genetic differences there. And I feel very strongly we've got to treat animals right. And actually, my biggest concern right now is some of the stuff that's going on with pushing an animal too hard biologically just to produce. And then you end up with things like lameness.
Mhm.
And I go to the slaughterhouse now. I don't like some of the things I've seen when you open them up. And it's all a matter of, because of push too hard, congestive heart failure problems, the liver abscesses, stiff and lame. No, that's not okay. Now, I also want to add, most of the industry is not doing this to cattle, but it is a significant minority that's doing it. So it's not 1 or 2%. And right now we got a booming export trade, and with the customers, and those customers don't do much oversight. The way to change things is when big buyers, because I learned this with McDonald's, it was like overnight change. But basically we simply had to repair and fix the stuff they already had. I mean, with chickens, broken crates. We made them fix them. My center track restrainer, I'd go into a plant and the hydraulic adjusters were busted on it. I made them fix them. You know, if the loading ramp was slippery, they had to put a non-slip floor on it. That's not remodeling the whole plant. Stunning equipment, they got to maintain it. That was the biggest problem with it. So that's simple. And 3 plants had to have a managerectomy. And then everything got better.
I believe it.
And now I hear about other factories having problems. With some vaccine factories, that's management. Management and the principles of management of a process are the same. We have a thing called SOPs, standard operating procedures. You figure out what parts of a process are the most critical. That's the way I set up my animal welfare methods. And you can read the papers are on Google Scholar, how I set up the auditing program. And it really did work. You have to figure out what are the relatively few things that are really important. And this is where we need visual thinkers.
Well, and
I can't do algebra, but I've been all over that Mars rover looking at where she has some really nice wiring when she took selfies of herself. I mean, that wasn't made by a computer.
Well, you brought up so much food for thought for all of us today. I keep wondering, what are those countries that are manufacturing the equipment?
I'll tell you what they've done. They don't stick their nose up at skilled trades.
Yes.
I've looked into those countries. Germany, Holland. Right now, if you want to build a poultry processing plant, all that stuff's it's coming out of Holland. Also, you know what else is coming out of Holland? The state-of-the-art electronic chip making machine. It's the size of a bus. I read about it in The Economist. It's based on technology invented here, and it comes from Holland. And the one thing I've always said, little guys innovate. Yep, it came from an obscure company. Even on the vaccines, like Moderna that was an obscure biotech company. It's not now, but little guys innovate. And I read about a lady, I don't remember names well, but I read about this lady professor, came up with the idea for the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. She had whole piles of grant proposals rejected, completely rejected. She lost tenure. She was demoted to instructor. She went to work for an obscure biotech company. I hope she gets the Nobel Prize for chemistry.
No kidding.
No kidding.
So. Well, let's hope so. Matthew wants to know if you what you would suggest for teachers working with teens who are highly verbal and love history but struggle with reading and word recognition.
Well, first, anyone who struggles with reading, the first thing that we need to do, and this is explained in my Way I See It book, is rule out a visual processing problem. And now I want to make it very clear, this does not explain all dyslexia. It only explains a subgroup, but it's a subgroup I can fix very easily. Ask them if the print jiggles on the page when they read. Then, if they say yes, try printing the work. Okay, you see how the back of this book here is a light lavender? Take the light lavender, light blue, light gray, the real pale pastel papers. Print the same page of a book on all these different pale papers and let them pick. I've seen lavender paper in the printer save a college career.
Wow.
Tan paper in a printer, save a college career. Play around with the backgrounds on the computers. Play around with fonts on computers.
Hmm.
And get a really good monitor. One that
I'm
does
sure.
not, some of the older flat screens have a fluorescent light hidden inside. You don't want those. You want to get a decent monitor or use a laptop or a tablet.
Hmm.
The other thing that can be a problem for these people is LED lights that flicker.
Yes, that
And,
is a problem that we are all becoming aware of more
well, I can tell you
recently.
right now, Big Dutchman sells a special LED light for chicken houses that does not flicker.
This
And I
is,
think as more people recognize this, these are must fix stuff in a classroom
mhm.
or at a workplace. And sometimes wearing a hat and getting over by a window and maybe disconnecting the light near your desk would work. But these are real problems. Now, that's a simple thing to try. And it might just work.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I like this question from an anonymous attendee. What do you think is the best way to teach visual thinkers math and verbal thinkers math?
Well, you can try some different things. I don't think you're ever going to really teach me algebra unless you teach me a specific algebra formulas to do specific things like hydraulic fluid flow, different site. Okay, and I plug and chug this particular formula for these kind of problems that I can learn. You see, and the way I had to learn statistics is that we made up different experiments for each type of statistical test. Again, it's kind of a plug and chug. That's about the only way I'm going to learn it. And that's how I got through statistics. The other thing I did when I was in college and I failed my first math quiz, I got help right away. The big mistake that students make is they don't get help fast enough. I have got to get some more water.
Okay, while you're doing that,
Getting some more water.
I have another question this question is from Matthew. Do labels help or hinder students?
I think on the relationships, that's where the labels can help. But I think sometimes other things, I think it holds them back. Now, the thing is, people that think differently, and several heads of Silicon Valley companies have used that term about different kinds of thinking. I'm saying there's that skills are going to be uneven. We need to work more on building strength. Trying to teach me algebra is just stupid. And the thing is that any algebra I'd need in the workplace, I could do it plug and chug. Or back when I was working all the time out on this stuff, I had these things called the Womack machine books. I still have them. They had big tables in them. And I can look it up on different size. So, got pumps this many gallons per minute. And the pipe is this size. I know that's done with algebra, but I did it with tables. Or I could learn the formula just for doing that. Like the area of a circle, pi times the radius squared. I rounded off about 3.14 for construction stuff.
Listening to you,
I don't think completely abstractly. I have to have a graphics file or I don't remember it.
You are a living embodiment of a life hack. You have figured out these things that some of us are still learning how to cope with, like those of us who are not particularly good in math. It's great. Thank you. I love this question. How do we encourage, this is from Kelsey, how do we encourage young people to explore the trades as well as help their parents see the value in pursuing the trades as opposed to traditional higher education?
Well, the thing is, like just today, I found a really nice picture that showed the bearings of that little helicopter. There was some really meticulous machining that went into that. That was probably not done by a degreed engineer. I haven't found the vendor for that. I found all the electronic stuff in the little motor that she has. I found out where that came from, who made it. And that's a very nice, beautiful little piece of engineering. But there's bearings all throughout that thing. That blade is spinning extremely fast. It's got to be on really good bearings. That's skilled trades. I have not been able to track down the source of that.
You are world famous. Is it easier for you to get answers to questions like that than it would be for us regular people?
I get them off the internet. I know how to search.
You just do the internet, okay?
It's on the internet. Because you see, the mistake that I explained, most people don't know how to search. my paper library skills went right over to the internet.
Mhm.
And people used to say, well, how'd you find these books in the library? I can tell you what I did. I'd go to the old Dewey catalog and I'd find the area, the general area, and then I'd go through the books in the shelf, and I always shelve them. I don't misshelve a book, I know that. And I'd go through the index of like a row of shelves this long, and then I'd find the mother lode review paper, get into its reference list. So I do the same thing. I'll go on Google Scholar, I go on the PubMed database, and I found the paper that started this whole book in the reference list at 3 o'clock in the morning of a pretty boring paper on visual perception
Mhm.
that showed that the object visualizer and the visual spatial were different.
Mhm.
I don't know how to pronounce it, Kanoskahov. I don't know how to pronounce the name of it, but and then I tracked down the person, one of the people that worked on some of this NASA equipment. LinkedIn.
Ah!
What? No, I did it online. But you see, I remind my students that cattle has 6 words when you search. So you have to do 6 different searches. Bull, cow, steer,
Steer,
heifer, calves, and calf. Okay, so let's say I just looking for a simple nutrition project, and I use cattle. But you might have a paper where the word steer was used throughout. In other words, they did a project, a nutrition trial, just about, could be the same kind of trial, but they used the word steer throughout the entire paper. Never mentioned cattle. You won't find that paper.
You're reminding me of the old Booleans. It was called Boolean searching when we were, those of us who are old librarians were learning how to be librarians.
Well, I think that mostly search engines do automatically do the and function. I have found
they do that. They do the and, but they don't necessarily do the or.
Well, I don't do the or. I just would search with the word steers.
Yeah.
And then I'd search for the word cattle, and then some parts of the country don't. Some parts of the world feed out bulls, so I do another search with bulls.
Interesting.
And most of these, baby calves probably wouldn't be in. Would bulls, steers, and cattle. I would do 3 separate searches. Don't do the or. No,
don't do it. Okay, no, never mind.
What I found works really well. No more than 4 keywords at a time.
Yeah, I think you're right.
No,
all right, we have another question.
Search.
And people do need that, and I think librarians can help with that. At least, I don't know, maybe old librarians like me. You mentioned major issues with public schools failing to support skill-based learning, sewing, cooking, woodwork, shop, etc. As a special education teacher, this issue is important to me, paramount to me. However, I understand the premise and the financial prioritizing requiring all students to be on a college track, anti-tracking high school expectations. I understand it theoretically, but feel that it is practically detrimental to all students for the reasons
we are losing skills.
Yes.
If you want to build a poultry processing plant right now, you're going to have to bring the equipment over here in 100 shipping containers.
Wow.
I learned that in 2019. And I got some other, I have to keep a little customer confidentiality on a reason. I got some other plane tickets I've already bought right now, where I'm probably not going to be very happy when I look at the nameplates on equipment, because it will be European. All right, let's take machine tools. Let's go back to the bearings on the helicopter. Probably made on a Japanese or European computerized machine tool. Because I have been in a shop for my industry. I just went to one a year and a half ago. Precision metal parts, state-of-the-art Japanese computerized machine tools. Yeah. We used to make that stuff. Cincinnati Millicron. You see, all the kind of companies I've worked for are what are called support companies. And when you lose industry, then you no longer have the support companies. Everybody I worked with is a support company. Okay, now the company that made the little servo motor power pack for the helicopter, that's a support company. It's the same, whether it's the livestock industry or whether it's space or whether it's a chip making machine. And where a lot of the people like me ended up, since we can't do the math, making mission critical parts.
Mm-hmm.
That parachute was woven in the UK, highly specialized, probably on a very fancy European loom.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went shopping for looms. Oh yeah, I found the cheap stuff that you make t-shirts, underpants on. Yeah, that doesn't come from Europe.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it's but we're paying a gigantic price for taking skilled trades out of the schools, the real high-end stuff. I mean, I know two guys that are as autistic as they can be, 20 patents each, own metal fabrication companies. One's a support company and the other makes stuff for the cattle industry. I have to keep some confidentiality,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
it's not what I'd call a support company, but a support company makes a part that goes in something else, where he makes a thing and he sells the entire thing.
Wow.
No,
It's,
I wanted to
you've
learn
opened
about
our
it
eyes
immediately,
this afternoon. Thank
and
you.
I wanted to go into something like aerospace. I wanted to go into doing artificial hips. Couldn't do the math. I had to drop a biomedical engineering course, but you need me to prevent mistakes like that metal on metal hip that put all that junk out into people's bodies. You need
Right.
people like me to prevent Fukushima. The engineers did a great job of making it earthquake proof. It shook and 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 it shook. All the emergency systems worked. Everything worked, totally intact. 20 minutes later, drowned by the tsunami. Basement flooded. Electrically driven emergency cooling pump stops. You know what happened. Electric
Right.
pumps don't run underwater, people.
That's true.
You need me to say, hey, what if the seawall's breached? I can see the water flooding the plant. And I know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know how to design a nuclear power plant, but I would have been putting watertight doors in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
would have saved it. Simple, old-fashioned watertight doors.
And that would have done it.
It would have saved it.
Yep.
That simple.
I think we have time for one more question, and I think this is an important one. Suzanne says, my daughter wears her headphones out because she freezes and is anxious in crowds when being spoken to. What is your advice in helping her get comfortable in going out without them? If
All right,
she
let's
isn't
talk-
wearing them, she'll cover her ears.
Okay, one of the things that can help on sound sensitivity, and there's been some successes, I don't know about it in adults, but many successes in late elementary school age kids, is give the kid control of the dreaded sound. So if it's a vacuum cleaner, they play with it and turn it on. Hair dryer, they play with it and turn it on. Buzzer in the gym, take them down there after hours, they play with the button and turn it on. And what I recommend on the headphones is you can always have them with you so that she has control. You can put them around your neck, put them in your backpack, but try not to wear them. In other words, it's really important to give her control, because the problem is if you wear that headset all the time, the ear is going to get more sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. It's going to get.
That is great advice.
It's a very simple thing you can do. And there's certain really loud places, like some of these restrooms with the automatic stuff. Yeah, then put it on for that. But then as soon as you come out, take it off. There's also a really interesting paper, and it is written up in the most recent edition of The Way I See It, is environmental enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. It's an adjunct to other therapies. And what you do in this is you stimulate two senses at the same time, like maybe smell and touch, with simple things like cold water glasses, carpet samples, aromatherapy stuff. And you're always changing the pair of stimuli that you're always going across the senses, two different senses. And they usually don't do vision and hearing together, but you might do classical music and aromatherapy, always changing it. And it's evidence-based. 3 keywords will find the paper: autism, environmental enrichment. And it uses simple household things. I think another thing we've got to do when it comes to the costs is we got to look at more resources we have in the neighborhood. Maybe a retired mechanic can teach students how to fix broken lawnmowers. Broken lawnmowers are free. let's look for, you see, as a visual thinker, I'm looking for things in the neighborhood. And since I like aviation, I remember one time going to this junky airplane hangar, and it had some people in there fixing up an antique airplane. I look at that and I go, ooh, I know just the kid's going to like that. And I was just on the internet today, and they were building these goofy little cars in a shop. And I'm going, oh, I know just the kids we need to get doing that. We need to find more of those things in the neighborhood. And I don't want to hear about, well, liability. I don't, we've got to deal with that. The thing, I just heard something really stupid today, that a company that makes little gazebos, little garden gazebos, got sued because some kid swung around a post and got a splinter in his hand. Oh, really? I think we've got a real serious problem right now of people growing up today that totally removed from the real world. That's the reason why I did the outdoor scientist and calling all minds. And the other thing, with my little bird kite, I had to tinker to get it to work. And I played around with cross arms to get my parachute to open. I was in 2nd grade. I can still remember little kid hands squeezing the pliers.
Wow.
I could dent the wire of the coat hanger, and then I had to go like this with it. I was using tools. Because students growing up, they've never used tools. That's ridiculous. And I'm not suggesting skilled trades for everybody. The mathematicians can go on in, and the computer part of that helicopter, I found that instantly. I found that.
Mm-hmm.
Qualcomm chip, found it instantly.
Wow.
But let's give the visual thing, let's give the skilled tradespeople, thank those bra seamstresses. They were very good bra seamstresses.
That was a
were
great
mission
story.
critical to that spacesuit not breaking when they were out on the moon with it.
Mm-hmm.
You see, this is where you need all the different kinds of minds to do things.
Exactly.
And we had to do some repairs on a build. We've got 40-year-old cheaply built condos. Ugh.
Yes.
Well, we had to get a guy come in here, and they had to fix some of the rotted stuff. And this guy was brilliant how he did it. He came in with an old white trailer, and he fixed them.
Dr. Grandin.
I was out there watching the whole thing, and he did something. He fixed it in a way that made it so you didn't have to tear down half the building to fix the rod.
This has been one of the most incredible experiences of my 12 years here in Sacramento, having you right here with all of us, speaking your mind and keeping it so real for us, and I think really being helpful. I want to mention to people in the audience, the Mind Institute here in Sacramento is a great resource for you. Sacramento Public Library has resources. Dr. Grandin is, I wish we could talk for another hour, because
well, the other thing is, you said on one of the chats here, you're only going to keep the video for 2 weeks or something. You have permission to keep it permanently.
Oh,
okay,
do we?
Yeah, you have permission to keep it permanently. I have now said it. This is a legal document now. I know my legal stuff. And
thank you.
You don't have to erase it. We need to be getting this information out. We got to get a lot clever at finding backdoors. I'll tell you, from a career standpoint, there's a real advantage with big corporations when they're building new things. Huge back doors to opportunity, where you go into a place, you learn every job on the floor, and you can work right up. You can go work over to the maintenance department, and then 15 years later, you get to play with giant Legos that you use a crane to put up. They're much more fun than the plastic ones.
Exactly. Exactly. You have just been a wonder, and we are so grateful that you took time out of your afternoon to join us in Sacramento. At Sacramento Public Library. And I'm sorry to all of the people who've been here that we weren't able to get to every single question.
Well, I can stick around a little longer if they want.
Can you?
Yeah, I can stick around a little bit longer.
We'll keep going. I have to make sure from our technical. So I need to ask Stephen. He's the tech guy. Can we stay a little longer, Stephen?
I get paid by the hour, Rivka, so I'm
Yes. All right, Dr. Grandin, if you can stay, we'll go
Stay for a
through.
little bit longer. Let's see. If we can
Okay,
get through these
you tell
questions.
us when you're finished, but
All right,
somebody,
okay.
because I don't know what ABA
Oh, I
therapy
know what
is,
ABA is. Okay.
what are your thoughts about ABA therapy?
Well, there's a lot of advocates on the spectrum that hate it because they were subjected to some really atrocious ABA where they were forced into sensory overload. Because when ABA first started, they didn't believe that sensory problems existed. It gets into the old thing about, the pure behaviorism, where everything is behavior and sensory just doesn't matter. And getting pushed into sensory overload, that's totally terrible. Now, I've always asked parents, watch your teacher when they work with a kid. Some teachers are very effective, and I find it doesn't matter what the name of the therapy is. A really good teacher doing a lot of one-to-ones with real little kids knows just how hard to push. You push too hard, you force them into sensory overload. You got to push a little bit, got to stretch them a little bit, or they don't advance. And if a child gets to it, absolutely hates going to therapy, something's wrong. What you want to have is the child is making advancement. Let's say it's a little kid like 3 years old, speech. I also was taught how to take turns when I was a child. I had to learn how to wait and take turns. And getting more speech, better turn taking. Also skills, dressing, brushing your teeth. These are things, you see, as a visual thinker, I can see these things. Then and little kids have got to get enough hours of one-to-one with an effective teacher. And the more modern ABA does account for sensory stuff and will do sensory stuff. You see, it's sort of like talking about the average sized dog. You've got a lot of variation out there.
Yes. Yes. Here's another question. Any thoughts about, this is from Dana, the impact of diet, gluten-free, casein-free, digestive system problems affecting the ASD brain? My son is on the spectrum, and at 3 years, we were trying to make a difference during these critical years.
There is evidence that shows that there's more gastrointestinal problems with autism. That's been documented in the literature. Now, as far as the diets go, they seem to be helpful for some people. For some people, they're helpful. I tried some of them, it didn't do that much for me, but for some people, they are definitely helpful.
Okay, that's good to know. There were a range of questions regarding the cattle industry, from the carbon footprint aspect of it to the people concerned about the animal welfare. And there's a question from Trudy on kosher slaughtering. What do you think of kosher slaughtering?
I've actually done a lot of work on that, and it's possible to do it with an acceptable level of welfare, but it requires a lot more management, attention to detail, procedure than regular slaughter. You do it sloppily, it can go bad on you really, really quickly. Now, when it comes to carbon footprint, a lot of people don't realize the very best cropland in the world, some of it's in Iowa and Illinois, was created by herds of bison, grazing animals. They're part of the land. We need to be getting them back in as a crop rotation with other crops. This is something that we need to be doing. We need to be doing a lot more crop rotation, because if we want to truly be organic, manure is going to be involved in that. And if you use grazing animals right, they can actually improve the land. They can actually help sequester some carbon. And then there's some stuff. I remember because on my book on improving animal welfare practical approaches, my textbook on animal welfare, I did a chapter on sustainability, and I was looking up some stuff on biofuels. So I couldn't believe it. This is not sustainable. To cut down trees in the southeastern United States, make them into wood pellets, put them on a ship, send them to the UK and burn them in a power plant is not sustainable. I can't believe they're doing that.
No, that doesn't sound very practical.
It's not.
Yeah. So well, I like the question. I don't know that there's much you can say about it. My daughter wasn't diagnosed until she was 20. I knew when she was 2 there was something wrong. She struggled socially but was good in academics. How is it that school failed her?
I'd have to, I don't have enough.
You don't have enough
I don't have enough
information.
information.
Okay.
Here's somebody is an engineer, it's a lady, says that her performance at work gotten worse and then she found out she's ASD. Well, maybe she just, I worked with all kinds of people at ASD. Maybe it'll help you at work to realize that the special ed department makes a lot of stuff, both in the math department and in the visual thinking department.
Mhm. And then there were a series of questions from people about what, how can you determine what type of learner your child is?
Well,
Or does it matter if she's exposed to a variety of things?
Well, I think the important thing is that kids aren't exposed to enough stuff. Because when I started looking up like Michelangelo, dropped out of school at age 12, well, he would have been walking around going to every church, and the churches were big time commissioning art at that time.
Mhm.
So you would have had exposure. And then he was raised in a family of stonecutters. He was also exposed to the tools. See, this is something where that's just so, if they're not exposed, how can you get interested if you're not exposed to something?
Mhm.
I got exposed to the cattle industry when I was a teenager.
Oh, and there was actually a question related to that, to when you were working in Arizona.
Yeah,
And
it was in the 70s. I was in.
right. And the question was, the boss coached you on your social skills in the workplace.
Yes, he
Was
did.
he the first person to do that, or had others done that too?
Well, I've been coached on a lot of social skills stuff. In fact, one of the things that was done in my generation, I think it's a really good social training thing, is when kids got to be 7 or 8, you had to put on your good clothes when the parents had a party. Greet the guests, shake hands with them, serve the snacks. And then when it was time for the grown-ups to have dinner, then they wanted us to leave. But families did that as a way to train kids in social skills. That's not a difficult thing to do.
Well, now that we can soon start getting together, we can do that. Okay, well, a wonderful comment for just how inspiring you are and for sharing your story so that they can share your story with their children. I think that's great. So here's a question. When your aunt and uncle in Arizona had you in the summer, was it their aim to put you to work doing practical jobs, or was it really just a vacation?
No, my mother wanted me to, I was at this special school. Mother had the sense that she had to get me exposed to a lot of different things. So her idea was to have me go out there and learn a bunch of things too, because Anne also taught me driving. And that's something that's going to take longer. I did 200 miles on dirt roads before I touched any traffic. And because this is how you deal with the multitasking problem, you've got to get the driving into motor memory. So start out, if you're in the city, go to the stadium parking lot and practice, or the mall parking lot when there's nobody there, like at 6 o'clock in the morning, and practice driving. If I hadn't learned to drive, that would have really limited my career opportunities. And then somebody here mentioned another one of my books, The Loving Push, and that addresses some of the research on the video game addictions. People on the spectrum are more prone to video game addiction. And I'm not seeing great jobs in the video game industry. That's not where they're going. Now, I don't believe in banning it, but it needs to be limited. And I've even had an autistic person write on a chat that from Brazil. I was just talking to Brazil recently, and he mentioned that he realizes that he needs to limit it and be doing some other things.
Yes, out in the real world. I think that's important. Brittany says, I didn't speak until age 5, nonverbal autistic. Now I have college education, can speak. How can parents, caregivers, etc., understand children with autism more besides talking to autistic adults like me?
Well, where I got the most understanding, was reading a lot of, things that other people on the spectrum had written, but also reading a lot of the things about the brain, because I actually did my PhD in neuroscience. It's been a journey for me realizing how differently I think. It's been a total journey. But then I start thinking about how the different minds can have complementary skills. And I actually went back through it, although I had about 10 jobs where I was living on construction sites for a good period of time. And I started writing down who did what on these jobs. And that's how I figured out that split between the clever engineering department and the more mathematically trained engineers, what they did. I'll tell you what's a disaster right now. You take a kid, got a bachelor's in engineering, maybe you can do all the math, and you put him in charge of a big construction project and watch him get ripped off by contractors.
Oh,
Oh
sure,
boy, is that bad.
sure.
Been there, 2 jobs, big plants, worst concrete work I ever saw.
Uh,
Ugh.
well, and there's impact on the rest of us. Think about
Oh, I mean,
the
really bad
the
concrete.
danger.
I'm talking about wearing down the rebar in 6 months. In 6 months, that shouldn't have happened.
Oh,
And he thought it was normal for concrete to wear out that fast. And I told him to go over to I said, get on a cattle truck and go over to the other plant. That concrete's been there for almost 20 years and it's still good. Go look at it.
mm-hmm.
He didn't know that. He was a degreed engineer.
Well,
He knew
that's where the
math,
real
but-
world comes in, right? Yeah.
And
So
let contractors just rip them off.
I like this question because it's about building community. Dennis wants to know, how can a group of autistics and friends create a community center where Aspies can connect with mentors?
Well, mentors, what happens often with mentors can find you. They get attracted to ability. Another important mentor in getting my business started was Jim the contractor, Jim Uhl. And he was starting a little tiny construction business. He was a former Marine Corps captain, and he wanted to start this business, and he seeked me out to design projects. And he was another mentor. He counseled me on social stuff too. And we built jobs together for 10 years.
That's
And
wonderful.
you see, mentors get attracted to ability. I'm a big believer in portfolios. And when I was working for the Farmer Ranchman, everything was going fine. And the magazine got sold and a new boss came in. He just saw how weird I was. And Susie, the graphics lady who put all the advertising layouts together, I'm pretty sure she was on the spectrum. She says, Jim doesn't like you. This is a different Jim. There's the good Jim, the contractor, and this other Jim, who is this new boss. He thinks you're really weird. We've got get together a big scrapbook of all of your articles. So I made this big scrapbook about this thick. And I went in and I showed it to the new boss and I got a raise. But the thing is, I did not recognize the warning signs that he didn't like me. And it was Susie in the graphics design department that suggested that we make the scrapbook, which I still have actually in a chest that I use as a coffee table.
That's a great story. I think we all could use that. I mean, how many of us have needed that kind of help
The
in
other
life?
thing I would recommend to anybody, every performance review you have, hard copy at home. Anything that you could use as a portfolio, programming code, you got to protect your portfolio because when you're weird, you need it for your next job.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
good.
that means hard copy at home. Hard copy, I mean paper.
Yeah.
Because I read a very sad story about a girl who got a lady who worked for a car company. Well, she had a boss that was making moves on her, and she turned him in, and all she had for a portfolio of her design work was some ancient floppy disk weird disk thing she can't use anymore. No, you protect your portfolio because
Good
you'll need
advice.
it for your job. You'll need it for your next job. Hard copy, keep it at home. Things disappear on the line. You'll need
Yeah.
it for your next job.
That's great advice. Someone wants to know, they have a 3-year-old ASD son with major problems in social development. They're concerned about education in public school because they've already seen some issues in daycare. Would love
Well, I hope
advice
he's
or
getting
thoughts.
Therapy. 3 years old, he needs
Mhm.
to be getting a lot of one-to-one teaching. Okay, so what do you do when you have no services? I was just on another call, people from all over the world on it, and a lady from Nigeria was on it. She had a 3-year-old. What do I do? There's no services. I said, you go to the grandmothers in the community, the grandmothers that have lots of kids, and get some grandmothers to start working with your child. And some grannies will have the knack on how to draw this kid out, but this kid needs to be getting some therapy. And if you can't find services, you get some grandmothers that have a lot of kids, you get an education student. And good teachers, I think they naturally have the knack. I know that's not being very scientific, but I've watched it, and I've watched teachers in many different programs with different names, working with these little 3-year-olds. They all do it the same way. The ones that are effective. No, you've got to start working with this kid now. You don't want to wait 2 years for diagnosis. I was in therapy by the time I was 2.5. And what I'm going to say, we can fight over the names of therapy. I want 20 hours a week of one-to-ones with an effective teacher. And that might be a grandmother living across the street. She might be the best teacher you could have.
That's wonderful.
And when you start just teaching them words, slow down when you talk to them, because when grown-ups talk fast, it went into gibberish. Give the kid time to respond. They're like a phone on a bad connection. Takes time to load that web page. Give it time. And just start working. And then little turn to, let's say the kid's spinning a coin. Then we're going to take turns spinning the coin. That's how you start working with them. No, you need to move on it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay, I
and
hope that.
some states and some parts of states are better on services than other, but I don't want to wait 2 years.
So
And
your
the worst-
recommendation
I'll tell you,
is,
the worst thing you can do with this kid is just park him on electronics all day. That's the worst thing you can do. And that's what I told the lady in Nigeria. So she had no services. And then I suggested that she get an electronic copy of The Way I See It. And I said, you go ahead and translate it. You got permission to copy it. You know,
nice.
just in your local area.
Mm-hmm. I saw a comment about music, how music might be
Music for
way.
some kids is absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And some kids will just pick up a musical instrument and play it. And schools have taken music. If they take music out, how's a kid going to find out he can play an instrument if he's never exposed to an instrument?
Right.
See, that's the same thing.
Exactly.
The same
Exactly.
exact thing.
And sorry, I'm trying to quickly go through all of the, you are getting so much love from your Sacramento audience, just so you know that. Any other thoughts about dealing? I loved your suggestion about the headphones, and that would also work maybe with other types of anxiety, just small doses, or
Well, in Thinking in Pictures, I discussed my experiences with antidepressant medication. It saved me. And I started taking it that's why I'm drinking so much water. I started taking it in my early 30s. As I went through my 30s, the anxiety got worse and worse and worse. The colitis got worse and worse. That's why I was eating yogurt and Jell-O. And I went on a very low dose of an old antidepressant named the disipramine. And if you're interested, I strongly recommend that you read it in the book. I always get worried about something being misconstrued when I talk about medication.
okay.
But I take a very low dose, been on the same dose. Big mistake that people make is they feel the anxiety coming back, they up the dose. Don't do that. Tough it out. Goes in cycles. Been on the same dose.
That advice right there is worth the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, you tough it out, because I've been on the same starter dose. And a lot of doctors want to up the dose, and you do too high a dose of an antidepressant, like a drug like Prozac. I've seen that work really well. And then they double the dose and you get agitation and insomnia, and that's a disaster, and they never want to touch it again. The other thing I want to mention, way too many meds given out to kids like candy, way too much. And the other thing is exercise. I'm doing 100 sit-ups every night. I despise every one of them. But it helps sleeping. But there's a place for medication. The other thing is, let's say you're bipolar or some other thing. You're nice and stable, totally stable, no side effects. I've watched people go off their meds, and it's been a disaster.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would have happened to me without the medication. I think my health would have been completely wrecked by now.
No, we need you to keep doing what you're doing to inspire the world. I think we have taken enough of your time. You've given us so generously, and yes, Elise says it best. You're a rock star.
Well, thank
And
you.
we hope you'll come back to Sacramento.
It was really great being here. And somebody asked here about bosses and social skills. I mean, I was taught even younger one of the things that's been a problem in some of the colleges is the person on the spectrum doing a total back and forth conversation with the teacher gets back to turn taking, 2 questions per class. I had learned that way before the farmer ranchman thing came up.
Mhm.
See, my generation, social skills were just sort of taught in a much more structured way. I call it teachable moments. It goes back, okay, we're sitting at the dining room table and I stick my finger in the mashed potatoes. Mother says, use the fork. Just quietly gives the instruction, gives me the instruction. Doesn't yell at me, just give me the instruction. That was classical 50s upbringing. And you went over, and the other thing is grown-ups corrected kids. That was the normal thing. I'd go in the store and touch too much stuff. The clerks would go, only touch the things you're going to buy. That's all they had to say, just like that.
That's good to know. And you've given us so much to think about for our whole audience and those of us who work at the library and everyone else. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Dr.
well, it's been
Grandin.
really good to talk to you, and thank you for having me. And I hope I've given you some good ideas, because I'd like to see some of these individuals get out, and because some of the funnest stuff I ever did was figuring out how to build stuff. We'd sit around and just discuss that, and that's friends who shared interests.
Yes. Yes. You're a wonderful community builder. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very, very much. It was great to be here, and I guess I leave the meeting now.
Yes. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
you are very welcome. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it today, and it will be available on the library's website within the next couple of weeks. Take care.